What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and with a lot of the big name free agents coming off the board, at least at the running back position, I thought this would be a good time to go through and update my way too early 2024 rankings. So today we're going to be going through my top 12 running backs, pretty much my RB1s heading into 2024. We definitely do have some shakeups from the video I made like right after the NFL season. Obviously, some big name free agents kind of switched things up here. We also had some coaching changes, all of that stuff. If you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and then I want to hear your thoughts. Obviously, still pretty early on in the offseason. What players do you think are higher or should be lower? Let me know. But let's just jump right into it, and we're going to start off in tier 1 with my running back 1. It's got to be Christian McCaffrey here. I don't think there's going to be a ton of variance on this one. He probably should be the clear running back 1, coming off a season where he averaged 24.5 PPR points per game. He's going to have strong usage both on the ground and as a pass catcher. He's going to be efficient. He's going to have the touchdown upside on this offense, and I don't see why his usage is going to shake up much from what we saw in 2023. Now, pivoting into tier 2, these are still running backs I really like heading into next year, and we're going to start it off with Breece Hall leading tier 2. I was really high on him heading into last season. I'm going to be high on him again here in 2024. Once we saw him get cleared for a full workload, which was in week 5, from that point until the end of the season, he averaged 19.3 PPR points per game, so nearly 20 PPR points per game. He did that on an offense that was pretty much a dumpster fire with terrible quarterback play, an awful offensive line. We've already seen the Jets go out, make some upgrades on the O-line. Aaron Rodgers should be back this season unless he's making some sort of a political run, but more likely than not, Aaron Rodgers is going to be back as the quarterback. And so with that upgraded offensive line, and this could just be a solid offense overall, I do think Breece Hall has a very high ceiling, and I really wouldn't be shocked if he's challenging Christian McCaffrey to be the running back 1 overall. Now, my next tier 2 running back, my RB3 overall, is going to be Bijan Robinson, and I'm going to be pretty high on pretty much all these Falcons weapons. I've liked these players individually in terms of their talent: Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. None of them have just been put in a spot to really succeed with Arthur Smith as the head coach. He is now gone. You're going from Desmond Ridder to Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position. That is a massive upgrade. And when we look at Bijan Robinson's usage and production in 2023, even though he was a little underwhelming fantasy-wise, he was still very involved as a pass catcher. He was 3rd in targets and target share, 4th in receiving yards. He was a strong performer on the ground, 12th in rushing yards over expected per attempt. The real thing that was just holding him back was his opportunity share. Barely took over 50% of the total opportunities in this Falcons backfield. I will be shocked if that does not improve heading into the 2024 season. Continuing on with tier 2, going to go with Kyren Williams, and I think he's definitely a big winner from free agency. There was a lot of quality running backs out there. Some guys we're going to talk about in this video. The Rams didn't just go after those top guys. They really made no additions at the running back position in free agency, so he still has to get through the draft. But at this point, I think it's a very good sign that they do want Kyren Williams to be their running back 1 moving forward. And even if they do get a guy in the draft, this is not some sort of stacked class where you're going to see like a round 1 running back come in and replace Kyren Williams. Some of you may be wondering like why I think they might look to replace him, and I don't think it would be the smart decision, but we have seen this a lot where teams end up hitting on a late round or undrafted running back. The guy performs well, and then for some reason they still go out, sign a dude in free agency for decent money, or they go out and spend a decent draft pick on them. It doesn't make sense to me. It seems like you found your solution without paying a big price, but we've seen it time after time. James Robinson, Elijah Mitchell, those are some of the more recent examples. Hopefully Kyren Williams can avoid that, and if he can, and even if it's like a day 3 pick in the draft, that's fine. Kyren should still be cruising heading into the 2024 season. And then my final tier 2 running back is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, and I definitely don't think he has the workload ceiling of the running backs going ahead of him, right? Everyone ranked ahead of him could be the full 3-down workhorse of their backfield. Jahmyr Gibbs is not going to do that with David Montgomery on the roster, but he proved in his rookie season that it really doesn't matter. He can overcome that with efficiency and his receiving production. After he returned from a hamstring injury, I believe that was like week 7, week 8, he averaged 19.4 PPR points per game over his last 10 games of the season. So I'd be expecting mid to high end running back 1 production out of Jahmyr Gibbs in 2024. Now we're going to shift into tier 3, and we're going to start off tier 3 with Jonathan Taylor. He kind of had a weird 2023. He played his first game in week 5 because he was out earlier on with the contract issues. Then he didn't see his typical usage until week 7. He was splitting with Zach Moss in week 5 and week 6. And then in his 7 games as the starter, he averaged 16.1 PPR points. So fine production, not necessarily the ceiling we were kind of hoping for. I do think we're going to have some shakeups here. Zach Moss is no longer there. Didn't think Zach Moss was going to be a huge issue, once JT was healthy and ready to go. But we also have a change in the quarterback. Richardson was out very early on in that season, so they were rolling with Minshew. That's who JT was playing with. Now we have Anthony Richardson coming back. And I do think he's probably going to cap Jonathan Taylor's touchdown upside just by vulturing touchdowns on the goal line. Or not even vulturing, right? He's not going to be tush-pushing it all the time. Dude's just a beast in the red zone. Richardson is going to score on the ground. But I think what JT loses in terms of the touchdown upside, he could definitely make up for with just the efficiency. This is going to be a really tough offense to defend, especially on the ground with Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. So I think JT's fine as like a mid-tier RB1 play this season. Now my next tier 1 running back is going to be Devon Achane. And he is definitely one of the more interesting running backs from the 2023 season. He ends up finishing as the running back 5 in PPR points per game, which is kind of wild because he was outside the Dolphins' top 3 running backs on the depth chart to start off the season, and then he ends up finishing as the top 5 running back for fantasy. In his first 3 games where he had a really strong role in that offense, he put up 51.3, 27 and 21.5 PPR points. He dealt with some injuries throughout the season, which kind of limited his usage, capped some of his upside kind of, throughout the rest of the season into the fantasy playoffs. And Devon Achane's never going to be a 3-down workhorse dude. He doesn't have that frame. He's not going to be getting the workload of the dudes ranked ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs. But I think he's going to have a strong role in this offense. I really liked Achane heading into last year because I just thought the fit was perfect with Mike McDaniel in this offense. With how explosive Achane is, they can get him limited touches, but he can turn it into big plays. I also think, he was splitting with Raheem Mostert. Achane, the younger guy, way younger, should be on the rise, whereas Raheem Mostert may be starting to slow down due to his age. So I do think Achane is a strong running back 1 pick this season. Now pivoting into tier 4, we're going to start off with Saquon Barkley. Now we're going to be getting into some of the dudes who switch teams in free agency. I'm probably going to be a little bit lower on Saquon Barkley than consensus. I imagine there's people out there who have him ahead of Devon Achane, maybe also ahead of Jonathan Taylor. But similar to why I wasn't super in on DeAndre Swift last year, I don't really love the fit. I think people hear a running back to the Eagles, they get super excited because this is a super strong run game, and I get it. But I just don't know if they're going to maximize the upside of Saquon Barkley. We did see them have an uptick in running back targets last year with Swift, which was good to see, but best case scenario, they're probably league average, so it's not like we're getting some sort of elite receiving ceiling out of Saquon Barkley. And then even when we look at Saquon's receiving production over the last 2 seasons, he's been pretty disappointing. He's been 9th and 10th in targets per game, which is fine, but it's definitely not the elite receiving ceiling we saw in his first 2 seasons. And you can make the argument the Giants had no weapons, defenses were able to lock in on him, which I guess is fair, but now you're going from, no other weapons around you to now you're competing for targets with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. It's a very different situation, but could be a kind of a similar problem there. And then I think the other issue is just the touchdown upside, right? Jalen Hurts with 15 rushing touchdowns last year. He led all quarterbacks with 44 red zone carries. He averaged 2.6 red zone carries a game. So I don't know if Saquon Barkley is going to be able to hit a huge touchdown number just based on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense being so effective with the tush push. So that seems a little negative. I feel like I needed to put out maybe why I'm a little bit lower on him, but I still think there's a lot of pathways for Saquon to be very successful. On the positive side, Saquon was still a very strong runner last year, even though he averaged 3.9 yards per carry. A lot of that was just due to the offensive line, the quarterback play, the environment he was in with the Giants. He was still 0.39 rushing yards over expected per attempt, which was sandwiched between guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, other strong pure runners. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's like a 5+ yards per carry guy on this Eagles offense. So still like Saquon, but maybe not as high as some other people. And then after Saquon here, wrapping up tier 4, it's going to be another dude who switched teams in free agency, and that is going to be Josh Jacobs. I was pretty surprised he signed with the Packers. It seemed like the Packers would probably roll into the season with Aaron Jones as their number one. That's not what they did. They went out, signed Josh Jacobs, released Aaron Jones, and even though Josh Jacobs is coming off a pretty disappointing 2023 season, I really like this landing spot for him here with the Packers. This is an offense that should continue to be on the rise, and even though we didn't see Aaron Jones have a great 2023 season, a lot of that was due to injuries. He was the RB1 of this Packers offense in 2021 and 2022. He was an RB1 in points per game despite not exceeding a 55% opportunity share. So Aaron Jones had been pretty locked into a committee, but was still able to deliver top 12 running back production. I think Josh Jacobs probably should see a larger workload with Aaron Jones, which is encouraging. You do have A.J. Dillon back, but you got to expect him to see a big role reduction. I feel like we've kind of seen this experiment with A.J. Dillon. It hasn't worked out. I highly doubt that Josh Jacobs and A.J. Dillon are going to be in like a 55-45 split, which is what we saw with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. For Josh Jacobs here, we just kind of have to hope that he's not washed. He was the running back 18 in points per game last year, averaged only 3.5 yards per carry, which is rough. And it's not like his advanced metrics were much better. He was negative 0.37 in rushing yards over expected per attempt. His teammate Zamir White was at, plus 0.33 rushing yards over expected. So you can't really use the offensive situation unless you're making the argument that they were kind of peaking towards the end of the season, which is fine. But Josh Jacobs is still only 26 years old, so if he does have some juice left, I think we'll see a nice 3-down workload. We know he can catch passes on a good offense. I think he'll be set up for success this year for fantasy. Now, pivoting into the fifth and final tier, we're going to start off with Travis Etienne. He had a pretty up and down season production-wise. It ended up finishing nicely as the RB6 in points per game with the 6th highest opportunity share, but it was definitely streaky, right? He had like a few huge 20-plus point games in a row in the middle of the season, kind of fell off up until the fantasy championship. But I think the big improvement we saw in his usage was the receiving production. But then unfortunately, as the receiving production went up, his efficiency as a runner fell off, which is what was great in his first season. He had a 1.07 rushing yards over expected in 2022. That fell to negative 0.29 this year. If the Jaguars don't end up adding competition, I'll probably jump Travis Etienne into tier 4. I kind of feel like they were trying to do that last year with drafting Tank Bigsby with a day 2 pick, but it just didn't work out. Tank just didn't make a huge impact. So we'll see if they go back to the well, maybe like a later free agent signing. Maybe they draft someone on day 2 again. But at this point, if they're not adding competition, I do think I'll raised Etienne up at least into tier 4. And then after Travis Etienne, I have Derrick Henry, and I really love this landing spot for Henry. I talked about him as a buy low option in Dynasty just because I thought he'd be leaving the Titans, and I thought the potential landing spots were going to be really solid for him. And looking back at this Ravens backfield, this is a unit that averaged 24.3 PPR points per game. So all the Ravens running backs combined, that's what they were averaging. And that was a backfield that had Gus Edwards and Justice Hill taking the majority of the touches. So there's definitely an opportunity for Derrick Henry to step in here and put together a very strong fantasy season. He had a down year fantasy-wise in 2023, but I think a lot of that was just due to the offense as a whole. You also had Tajay Spears kind of cutting into his opportunities, which, I think Tajay Spears is a great player, so maybe I'm willing to kind of accept that a little bit more, but he was still at 0.31 rushing yards over expected per attempt, so he was in the positives, which was good to see. And if Derrick Henry does not fall off this season or get injured, I think he's probably likely to outperform this ranking. If you have him higher, I get it. I just do think we have to add in the risk of relying on a 30-year-old running back with the career workload of Derrick Henry. When running backs fall off, it can happen quickly, and you're just kind of taking that into account when you're picking them compared to a guy like maybe Travis Etienne or even Josh Jacobs, who maybe looked like he was regressing but is still only 26 and doesn't have the wear and tear of a guy like Derrick Henry. But like I said, if you want him higher, I get it. I think the situation is great. If he doesn't fall off and he stays healthy, I think we'll be looking at a big season out of Derrick Henry. And then my final running back, my RB12, it's going to be Rachaad White. I feel like this last spot could have gone to a few different players until the Bucs actually go out and add any competition. I'll probably just keep Rachaad White here. He was the running back 9 in points per game. Great usage, number 2 in carries, number 9 in targets. Wasn't overly efficient in either of those areas, but like I said, they didn't add anyone in free agency. We'll see what they do with the draft, but maybe they just like Rachaad White as their workhorse. That's definitely possible. They brought back a lot of the weapons. Baker's back, Mike Evans is back, so that's going to wrap up my top 12 running backs. I think this is a really interesting year at the running back position. You have a lot of young blood in the top 12 here, guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, emerging guys last year, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams. You also have some veterans that are still kind of holding on in different situations. So I think it's a fun year for the running backs. Let me know your thoughts down below. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.